Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. I am so thrilled to have you here today because we are unpacking a truly fascinating intersection of law, social media, and artificial intelligence. We're going to dive into documents from a real recent criminal case out of China that raises some absolutely profound questions about digital expression. We'll be examining court verdicts, a passionate appeal written right from a prison cell, and, incredibly, how advanced large language models have actually analyzed this exact case. It's a complex story for sure, but don't worry, we've broken it down into clear, easy-to-follow pieces. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap. We'll start with the case of Dr. Chen, move to the court's verdict, look at his defense, unpack the clash between state law and party discipline, check out that AI legal analysis, and finally, wrap up with the broader social implications. Part 1, the case of Dr. Chen. So, Dr. Chen is an independent scholar with a background in complex systems theory. Between July 2019 and April 2022, he was just periodically active on a small, personal Twitter account. But then things escalated incredibly fast. In September 2022, police suddenly entered his rural home and arrested him. By January 2023, he was formally indicted, and by April of that same year, a first-instance judgment was handed down. His online activity transitioned into a criminal conviction in the blink of an eye. Now, you might be wondering, what exactly was the evidence against him? Well, according to the case files, the police's evidence consisted entirely of non-original content. We're talking exclusively about retweets. He retweeted public posts from the U.S. Embassy, video clips of U.S. politicians like Donald Trump, some political cartoons, and various theoretical articles. And get this, his account had fewer than 100 followers, many of which were likely just bots anyway. So we are looking at a tiny, tiny footprint of shared rather than original information. Part 2, the court's verdict. You have to ask, how does sharing non-original content on such a microscopic account lead to a criminal conviction? Dr. Chen was hit with a charge translated as picking quarrels and provoking trouble. Now, legally speaking, this charge requires two very strict elements. First, the subjective intent of knowingly spreading false information, and second, the objective result of causing a serious disruption to public order. So the crucial point is how the court actually proved that subjective intent. The prosecution didn't really have direct evidence that Chen knew the retweets were technically false. Instead, the judge utilized Chen's high education against him. The reasoning was basically, because he has a PhD and a high intellect, he should have been able to distinguish right from wrong. Therefore, the court assumed his retweets were made with the subjective intent to disrupt. Based on that logic, the verdict came down. Dr. Chen was sentenced to 1 year and 8 months in prison. He did appeal this decision, but the higher court simply upheld the original sentence, behind closed doors, completely without holding an open appellate hearing. Part 3, the scholar's defense. From his cell, Dr. Chen mounted an extensive appeal, something he referred to as a blood letter. To really grasp his defense, we have to understand the environment of his interrogations. Chen noted that during the proceedings, a prosecutor reprimanded him using this highly ideological phrase, "You eat the party's food and smash the party's pot." It's a common idiom used to criticize disloyalty, and Chen pointed out that this was a deeply political accusation rather than a strictly legal one. In stark contrast to that ideological rhetoric, Dr. Chen mounted a beautifully philosophical defense. He actually referenced Plato's allegory of the cave, arguing that he's merely a prisoner observing shadows on the wall. He said, look, as a scholar, my job is to look at different perspectives. He argued he was simply observing and doing one-click retweets of existing information to save it for later study, not maliciously endorsing or creating false facts. He didn't stop at philosophy either. He used his scientific background to dismantle the charge. Applying complex systems principles like the CAP theorem and network robustness, he explained that social networks are incredibly chaotic. From a pure physics perspective, a marginal node with under 100 followers literally does not have the mathematical capacity to cause a severe disruption to the entire system. Objectively speaking, his retweets were a drop in the ocean. Let's move to part 4 and see how this builds into the conflict of law versus party discipline. Dr. Chen's defense really highlights a massive systemic conflict in governance. We have to clearly distinguish between these two systems. On one side, you have state law. This applies to all citizens and is based strictly on the criminal code. On the other side, you have party discipline. These are internal rules that apply strictly to members of the Chinese Communist Party. There are entirely different jurisdictions with totally different standards. And here is the critical mismatch that Chen identified.
Dr. Chen is an independent scholar. He is not and has never been a member of the party. Yet, he was being judged and reprimanded with internal party rhetoric. Meanwhile, the judges and prosecutors are party members who are actually bound by strict internal discipline to serve the public and uphold the law fairly.
Part 5. AI Legal Analysis. This is where things get truly wild. Large language models, specifically DeepSeek and Gemini, were used to process this complex human trial. And the AI models took a brilliant, totally objective approach. Instead of just debating Chen's retweets, they flipped the script and reframed the entire case based on the rule of law. Step 1, they acknowledged Chen isn't bound by party rules. Step 2, they shifted the analytical focus squarely onto the judicial officer's conduct. Step 3, they evaluated whether those officers actually violated their own party constitution and state law by how they handled Chen. And this brilliantly illustrates what they found. The DeepSeek model took Chen's very emotional accusations and mapped them directly to actual legal frameworks. Where Chen complained about getting ideological lectures, the AI found a highly valid legal violation. Applying internal party standards to a non-member flat-out violates the basic principle of criminal law. Where Chen emotionally accused the officials of being a judicial mafia, the AI coldly noted that aggressively yelling at citizens violates the party's own strict mass discipline rules regarding public service. The Gemini model zeroed in heavily on the procedural flaws. It found that holding a closed-door trial without a clear legal justification, like state secrets, for example, was a clear violation. Plus, it entirely agreed with Chen's scientific defense. It stated the prosecution completely failed to objectively prove that the retweets were false, or that a tiny 100-follower account actually caused severe disruption. Ultimately, Gemini concluded that punishing a citizen using internal party metrics is an abuse of power. The overall consensus from the AI analysis was incredibly striking. By weaponizing a vague legal charge to suppress a citizen's digital expression, the officials' actions directly contradicted the state's own stated macro policies. Essentially, the AI concluded they risked violating the absolute core tenet of the party itself, which is serving the people. Part 6. Broader social implications.
Let's zoom out here because the systemic risks identified in these documents are severe. When the lines between actual legal statutes and ideological disciplines start to blur, it causes a rapid erosion of public trust in the whole judicial system. It suppresses academic vitality, too. If scholars are terrified to even retweet research or opposing views, innovation just dies. It contradicts high-level national policies advocating for the rule of law. And worse, it turns vague charges like picking quarrels into what are known as pocket crimes, crimes that can just be pulled out of a pocket to punish almost anything, which vastly increases the cost of basic, everyday social communication.
Now, reviewing the whole case, the DeepSeek AI generated this really profound warning. Ruling status is not a natural insurance, but a heavy responsibility. The AI pointed out that true rule of law requires governing bodies to practice self-supervision. If power is used simply to crush a marginal node rather than protect it, the system ultimately harms its own legitimacy. This case really is a perfect microcosm of our modern digital struggle, isn't it? A few clicks on a screen, a highly complex system of laws and party rules, and a scholar sitting in a cell. It leaves us with a vital question to ponder. As technology makes sharing information easier than ever before, how will the shifting boundaries between internal ideological discipline and objective state law shape the future of our global digital rights? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.